Is Russia on the brink of collapse? The war in Ukraine has sent shockwaves around the world, but what if I told you it could lead to the unthinkable, the downfall of Russia itself? Stay tuned as we unravel the 12 startling reasons why this conflict might spell doom for one of the world's superpowers. You won't believe reason number 7. Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Military Insights and History. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that has the entire world holding its breath: the potential collapse of Russia due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. This video is packed with crucial insights, so make sure you watch until the end and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get started. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which began in 2014 and dramatically escalated in 2022, has become one of the most consequential geopolitical events of the 21st century. Rooted in a complex history of political, cultural, and territorial disputes, the war has not only reshaped Eastern Europe but has also sent ripples across the global stage, altering international relations and strategic alliances. Russia's initial annexation of Crimea in 2014 was a bold move that signaled its willingness to use military force to achieve its geopolitical objectives. This act of aggression was met with international condemnation and set the stage for ongoing tensions and violence. The situation further deteriorated in 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, leading to widespread devastation and a humanitarian crisis. This invasion was justified by the Kremlin on the grounds of protecting Russian-speaking populations and countering NATO's influence, but it quickly became apparent that the real motives were far more complex and far-reaching. The response from the international community was swift and severe. A broad coalition of countries, including the United States, the European Union, and many others, imposed extensive economic sanctions on Russia. These sanctions targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including finance, energy, and defense, with the aim of isolating Russia from the global market and crippling its economic capacity. The sanctions have had profound effects, causing the Russian ruble to plummet and inflation to soar, severely impacting the everyday lives of Russian citizens. The war has also led to a massive military engagement on both sides, with Russia committing a significant portion of its military resources to the conflict. This has resulted in high casualty rates and a considerable strain on military equipment and logistics. The prolonged nature of the conflict has stretched Russia's military capabilities thin, leaving it vulnerable on other strategic fronts. Domestically, the war has sparked significant unrest within Russia. As the economic situation worsens and the human cost of the conflict becomes more apparent, public dissent has grown. Protests against the war and the government's economic policies have been met with harsh crackdowns, further fueling domestic instability. The conflict has also led to a humanitarian disaster, with millions of Ukrainians displaced from their homes and widespread destruction across the country. The international community has rallied in support of Ukraine, providing humanitarian aid and military assistance. This global solidarity has not only isolated Russia but also intensified calls for accountability and justice for the atrocities committed during the war. Moreover, the war has exposed deep-rooted issues within Russia, such as corruption and mismanagement, which have further undermined its ability to sustain the war effort and maintain internal stability. The Kremlin's reliance on propaganda to maintain public support is showing cracks, as the reality of the war and its consequences become undeniable. In addition to these immediate effects, the war in Ukraine has triggered significant geopolitical shifts. Countries are re-evaluating their security policies, with many increasing their defense budgets and strengthening alliances to counter the perceived threat from Russia. This has led to an increasingly polarized world, with Russia finding itself more isolated than ever before. The economic dependency on China as a counterbalance to Western sanctions has also altered Russia's strategic position. While this relationship provides some economic relief, it also places Russia in a vulnerable position, potentially subjecting it to Beijing's economic and political influence. As we examine the unfolding events, it's clear that the war in Ukraine has set off a cascade of effects that threaten the very fabric of the Russian state. The following are 12 reasons why this conflict could lead to the collapse of Russia. Reason 1. Economic sanctions. The international sanctions imposed on Russia have been nothing short of crippling. These sanctions, aimed at key sectors such as finance, energy, and defense, have isolated Russia from global markets and severely restricted its economic growth. The ruble has plummeted in value, causing inflation to soar and making everyday goods increasingly unaffordable for the average Russian citizen. Major multinational corporations have pulled out of Russia, leading to widespread job losses and a shrinking tax base. As foreign investments dry up and the cost of borrowing skyrockets, Russia finds itself in an economic stranglehold that grows tighter with each passing day. This economic asphyxiation not only hampers the government's ability to fund the war effort but also stirs public discontent as living standards continue to decline. Reason 2. Military overstretch. Russia's military involvement in Ukraine has stretched its armed forces to the breaking point. With a significant portion of its military assets concentrated in Ukraine, Russia is left vulnerable on other fronts. This military overstretch means that Russia is less capable of responding to potential threats from NATO or dealing with unrest in regions like the North Caucasus. The high casualty rates and the wear and tear on military equipment further weaken Russia's defensive capabilities. Additionally, the prolonged conflict drains resources that could be used for modernization and training, leading to a gradual degradation of military effectiveness. This overextension not only endangers Russia's strategic interests but also exposes it to potential internal and external threats that could destabilize the nation. Reason 3. International isolation. Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine have led to unprecedented levels of international isolation. Diplomatic relations with many countries have soured, resulting in a significant reduction in Russia's global influence. International organizations, including the United Nations and the European Union, have condemned Russia's actions, leading to its exclusion from key decision-making processes. This isolation also impacts Russia's ability to engage in international trade and attract foreign investments. The diplomatic fallout has led to the severing of long-standing alliances and has pushed Russia into a corner where it struggles to find reliable partners. As Russia becomes increasingly isolated, its ability to navigate global politics and protect its interests diminishes, exacerbating its vulnerabilities on the world stage. Reason 4. Domestic unrest. The prolonged war in Ukraine has ignited a firestorm of domestic unrest within Russia. Protests have erupted in major cities, with citizens voicing their opposition to the war and the government's handling of the economy. The Kremlin's heavy-handed approach to quelling dissent, including arresting protesters and silencing opposition media, has only fueled public anger. This domestic turbulence threatens to escalate into widespread civil unrest, potentially leading to a revolutionary fervor reminiscent of the early 20th century. The government's inability to address the grievances of its people and the growing sense of disenfranchisement among the populace could destabilize the political landscape, making it increasingly difficult for the Kremlin to maintain its grip on power. Reason 5. Brain drain. Russia is experiencing a significant brain drain as many of its brightest minds flee the country in search of better opportunities abroad. This exodus includes scientists, engineers, academics, and other highly skilled professionals who are critical to the nation's innovation and economic development. The loss of intellectual capital weakens Russia's competitive edge in technology and industry, stunting growth and innovation. Furthermore, this brain drain exacerbates the talent gap in crucial sectors, making it difficult for Russia to maintain its status as a global leader in fields like aerospace, cybersecurity, and nuclear technology. As the country's best and brightest continue to leave, the prospects for Russia's future development and prosperity grow increasingly bleak. Reason 6. Declining energy revenues. Russia's economy is heavily dependent on its energy exports, particularly oil and gas. However, the war in Ukraine has led to a significant decline in demand for Russian energy, as countries seek to reduce their reliance on Russian resources. This shift is driven by a combination of sanctions, geopolitical realignments, and a push for alternative energy sources. The resulting drop in energy revenues has dealt a severe blow to Russia's economy, which relies on these exports to fund government spending and maintain social stability. The loss of these critical revenues not only hampers economic growth but also limits the government's ability to sustain the war effort and address domestic issues. As the energy market continues to evolve, Russia's economic foundation becomes increasingly unstable. Reason 7. Corruption and mismanagement. The war in Ukraine has brought to light the rampant corruption and mismanagement within the Russian government and military. Resources meant for the war effort are often siphoned off by corrupt officials, leading to inefficiencies and shortages on the front lines. This corruption extends to various levels of the government, undermining public trust and eroding the effectiveness of state institutions. The mismanagement of funds and resources not only hampers the military campaign but also exacerbates economic difficulties, as public funds are diverted away from essential services and infrastructure. The pervasive corruption creates a cycle of inefficiency and distrust that weakens the entire socio-political fabric of Russia, making it increasingly difficult for the state to function effectively. Reason 8. Loss of global influence. Russia's aggressive stance in Ukraine has severely damaged its reputation on the global stage. Once considered a formidable superpower, Russia is now viewed as a pariah state by many. The international community's condemnation and the resulting diplomatic fallout have significantly diminished Russia's ability to influence global events. This loss of global influence is evident in its exclusion from key international forums and its reduced ability to broker deals or form strategic alliances. As Russia's voice grows weaker in international affairs, its ability to shape global policy and protect its interests diminishes. This decline in influence not only affects Russia's geopolitical standing but also undermines its strategic objectives, leaving it increasingly isolated and vulnerable. Reason 9. Regional separatism. The war in Ukraine has emboldened separatist movements within Russia's own borders. Regions with distinct ethnic and cultural identities, such as Chechnya, Tatarstan, and Siberia, are increasingly seeking greater autonomy or even independence. The central government's focus on the war has diverted attention and resources away from addressing these regional aspirations. As a result, separatist sentiments are gaining traction, posing a direct threat to the territorial integrity of the Russian Federation. The rise of regional separatism could lead to internal conflicts and weaken the unity of the state, further destabilizing the nation. If these movements gain momentum, they could trigger a fragmentation of Russia, leading to the disintegration of its federal structure. Reason 10. Economic dependency on China. In the wake of Western sanctions, Russia has turned to China for economic support. This shift has made Russia increasingly dependent on Chinese investments and trade, altering the balance of power between the two nations. While China benefits from this arrangement by gaining access to Russian resources at favorable terms, Russia finds itself in a vulnerable position. This dependency limits Russia's economic sovereignty and makes it subject to China's economic and political demands. As China leverages its influence over Russia, the Kremlin's ability to pursue independent policies is curtailed. This shift in power dynamics weakens Russia's global standing and increases its reliance on a single, dominant partner, making its economy more fragile and susceptible to external pressures. Reason 11. Cyber warfare backlash. Russia's involvement in cyber warfare has not gone unnoticed by the international community. As cyber attacks linked to Russian operatives continue, nations around the world are ramping up efforts to counter these threats. Increased cybersecurity measures, along with retaliatory actions such as sanctions and cyber counterattacks, have further isolated Russia. The global backlash against Russia's cyber activities has damaged its reputation and strained diplomatic relations. Additionally, the focus on cyber warfare has diverted resources from other critical areas, weakening Russia's overall strategic position. The sustained cyber conflict has not only heightened global tensions but also contributed to Russia's growing international isolation and internal vulnerabilities. Reason 12. Humanitarian crisis. The war in Ukraine has created a profound humanitarian crisis, with millions of refugees displaced and widespread destruction across the region. The international outcry over these atrocities has added immense pressure on Russia, both morally and politically. The ongoing humanitarian crisis has galvanized global support for Ukraine and led to increased aid and assistance to the Ukrainian government. This international solidarity has further isolated Russia and intensified calls for accountability. The sustained humanitarian disaster damages Russia's image on the world stage and could lead to more severe repercussions, including war crimes investigations and additional sanctions. The weight of this crisis adds another layer of complexity to Russia's already precarious situation, amplifying the challenges it faces both domestically and internationally. As we've explored, the war in Ukraine has set off a chain reaction of events that could ultimately lead to the collapse of Russia. From economic turmoil and military overstretch to domestic unrest and international isolation, the challenges are mounting. The future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. The world is watching closely. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We want to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to John's Military Insights and History and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.